That night, Jani, a tanker truck driver, ran through the deserted streets towards Alas Roban. Dark and winding roads between tall trees create an eerie atmosphere. The raindrops that started to fall slowly made the windshield of his truck wet, while the wipers creaked softly as if they felt the anxiety that filled the air. Jani has heard various mystical stories about Alas Roban. Many drivers said they saw apparitions or even experienced strange things while passing through the forest. But Jani, a man who has been driving trucks for decades, prefers to focus on the road in front of him. It's all just bullshit, he thought, trying to shake off the image of fear that was beginning to creep into his mind. However, something was different that night. The air in the truck felt colder than usual. Jani turned the heating knob, but the temperature remained the same. He turned to the passenger seat, making sure no one was sitting there, even though his eyes kept catching shadows from the corner of his eye. As he started to climb into the Alas Roban area, the radio in his truck suddenly crackled. The originally silent frequency turned into a strange crackling sound. He tried turning the knob, but the sound was still there, getting louder and louder. His ears pricked at the faint whispers among the static. One sentence kept repeating itself, almost inaudibly. "Don't come in. Don't come in." Jani gulped, her eyes glued to the increasingly dark street. The shadows of the trees loomed like figures watching his every step. The truck's lights, which should have been bright, now seemed unable to penetrate the darkness that enveloped the forest. In the distance, a thin mist could be seen starting to creep from within the trees, like soft hands trying to reach his truck. Suddenly, from the fog, a shadow of a person was seen standing in the middle of the road. Jani was shocked. Her foot immediately stepped on the brake, causing the truck to stop suddenly. His heart was beating fast. In front of him, a woman stood stiffly. Her hair was long and loose, her face was covered, her clothes were tattered, and her skin was pale bluish like a corpse that had been frozen for a long time in the cold. Jani looked at the woman with bated breath. Does he need help? Jani thought, even though her heart said something different. He pressed the horn, hoping she would move. But the figure remained silent, not moving, just standing there like a living statue. When Jani started to doubt, the woman suddenly raised her head slowly. From behind her hair, a pair of bright red eyes appeared, looking straight at Jani. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. His body froze, while the radio crackled again with a louder voice. Go. Go now. Jani's hands trembled as she held the steering wheel. He tried to start the truck again, but the engine suddenly stopped. Now, the sound of small steps could be heard from the front of the truck. The closer it got, the clearer it became. Jani tried to calm herself, her hands wet with cold sweat, squeezing the steering wheel of the truck that now felt increasingly heavy. The figure of the woman with bright red eyes was still standing in front of her truck. The sound of footsteps that had been faint before was now heard more clearly, haunting every passing second. Panicking, Jani tried to start her truck's engine again. The key was turned, but only the hoarse sound of the engine failing to start was heard. Damn. In her mind, she only thought of one thing. Get out of here as fast as possible. However, the truck that wouldn't start and the scary figure in front made her body stiffen in place. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps stopped. Silence. Too silent that only Johnny's breathing could be heard. The woman was now closer, very close. Her red eyes stared directly at Johnny, as if piercing her soul. Without thinking, Johnny unbuckled her seatbelt, preparing to get out and escape. But when her hand touched the door handle, the truck door suddenly locked itself. "What the hell is this?" she hissed. She tried to open it again by force, but in vain. The door lock wouldn't turn, and she was trapped inside the truck. Suddenly, the woman moved. She didn't walk, but floated. She slid quickly toward Johnny's side window. Johnny's breath hitched as the figure appeared in the window next to her eyes burning sharply like embers in the darkness. The woman brought her face close to the glass. Her pale hands pressed against the window, creating cold fog stains. "Open." The woman's voice sounded softly from outside the window. Her voice broke the silence of the night, as if piercing Johnny's eardrums. Johnny shook her head, refusing with fear that was increasingly suffocating her chest. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to hold back the fear that was starting to overwhelm her. But the woman didn't give up. She knocked lightly on the window, harder and faster, as if forcing Johnny to obey her request. "Open!" the woman shouted suddenly, with a voice that echoed inside Johnny's head. The knocking on the glass turned into a hard blow that almost broke the window. In a panic, Johnny screamed and stepped on the gas pedal even though the engine hadn't started. Miraculously, the truck suddenly started up again with a loud roar. Johnny no longer cared about anything but running away from the terrifying figure. She quickly stepped on the gas pedal as hard as she could. The truck sped away, leaving the woman behind, but the sound of her screams still echoed in Johnny's ears. When the truck managed to get out of the foggy area, Johnny felt relieved. Her breath was ragged, but the tension in her body slowly eased. "Done," she muttered, trying to convince herself that she was out of danger. However, after a few minutes of driving, something much stranger happened. From the rearview mirror, Johnny saw something that made her heart stop. The fog that she should have left behind, was now chasing behind her truck. It was moving fast, faster than anything Johnny had ever seen before. In the fog, she could see dark silhouettes, many, more than one. They were chasing the truck, getting closer, faster. Johnny stepped on the gas pedal even deeper, even though the truck was already driving at maximum speed. Cold sweat soaked her entire body. Ahead, the road became increasingly winding, and he had to concentrate hard so as not to slip into the ravine on the side of the road. But the fog did not stop. Even from the rear window of the truck, Johnny could see the figure of the red-eyed woman reappear, floating in the fog, staring at him with a vengeful gaze. Her face was clearer now, her skin pale and rotting, her lips wide open in an inhuman smile. Jani had no other choice. In his heart, he prayed. The truck he was driving began to shake violently, as if something from within the fog was trying to pull him back. Suddenly, from inside the radio that had been crackling, a soft voice came. "You can't run." The voice was cold and sinister, as if it came from the depths of the forest that no human could ever reach. Just as Jani began to think that this was the end, something large slammed into the back of his truck. The truck shook violently, making Jani almost lose control. With gasping breath, he tried to keep the truck on track. But what was chasing him was now too close. In the windshield, the woman's figure appeared again, this time right in front of her, standing in the middle of the road. Jani could only stare at her with wide eyes. There was no way to avoid it.